Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I start by thanking the member for Beverley and Holderness for bringing this important debate to the Chamber today for a very full and thorough discussion. I want to highlight a few issues in Suffolk Coastal. I recently had quite a large conversation with many parents. The survey went out and nearly 100 parents filled in my survey and told me the extent of the issues that they themselves are facing as a consequence of battling special educational needs. 60% of those that filled in the survey told me that they've had to withhold their children from school for over a year, for up to a year, because their children couldn't access education in a fitting that was right for them. Of those 60%, nearly a quarter have been off school for over a year. Now, it won't surprise anyone in this chamber or any parents that are listening to this debate that so many families are struggling with the mental health consequences of this crisis. 1 in 2 parents told me that they themselves are battling with the mental health issues as a consequence for the battles that they're going for with SEND. Now, in the many conversations I've had with schools across my constituency, with parents, with young students, we've also explored some of the recommendations and recommendations that can be brought forward, and I've spoken at length about this in the past. Now, we have the dual badge in Suffolk as being F40, but also being an area that's being let down with SEND. Our county council is effectively in special measures. I will give way. Yeah.
And that's the truth that dare not speak its name. That is often the most disadvantaged parents, often the most poorly educated, that struggle to navigate a complex system. You know, and middle-class parents are an advantage. Let's face facts. But that's never really recognised. And it needs to be. Those people need support and guidance to navigate this system, to get the education that they rightly deserve for their children.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I couldn't agree more with the honourable member, and that's in fact one of the reasons why I know so many people here are passionate about this issue, that the people that can't articulate for themselves, can't fight for themselves, need people to stand up and fight for them. I will say that in the many discussions that I've had, I've worked with my constituents, with the schools, to come up with 6 key recommendations that we think also will be innovative, that we know there's a funding issue, and I do welcome the government's investment and commitment to it, but we also need to relook at how we deliver special educational needs. EHCPs is just one part of the problem, but it isn't. Fixing the EHCPs won't fix the situation that we see and parents are facing. In Suffolk, we have a school in Saxmundham that closed down last summer, after 2 years after it had over £1 million spent on its SEND unit. 2 years later, it was shut down because of a declining population in that area. It's a great facility that could facilitate both primary and secondary education in its footprint. And I've been urging the government to look at that. I know I've written to the Minister, and I will continue to urge them to look at that and take that provision forward. More widely, we need a national conversation about SEND and about funding. We need to make sure that parent voices, and I welcome many other members from both sides that have talked about the need to bring in parent voices and young students' voices to this national conversation. We absolutely must hear from them why it's failing and how adversarial the system has become. Now, on that funding point,
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Just the stats published today by the government, over 482,000 EHCP children with EHCPs, but 1.284 million children without EHCPs that require SEND support. So while the £750 million is absolutely welcome, does the member agree with me that this is a drop in the ocean and the government needs to invest more?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and perhaps he may agree with me with what I'm about to say, which, yes, funding is part of the issue, but we need to relook at the entire system to solve it at the scale that's needed. In rural areas, the issue, and I know the honourable member that's leading the debate spoke about this at the beginning, the rural issues are much different to urban areas. We have declining populations in many of my primary schools. I have one primary school with just 15 students and with spare classrooms because they don't match, the population growth doesn't match the capacity. So we have capacity within these schools, and now I've put forward a recommendation that has been supported in principle by my county council, that where we have declining populations in rural areas, we could in effect operate with a special education unit alongside mainstream provision, acting separately but within the same infrastructure, that SEND unit could bid for separate funding, it could have a separate catchment area, a wider catchment area than that primary school has. And in fact, what's incredibly exciting about this idea is that it doesn't need to stop in year 6. We know that in primary schools, very small, very cute primary schools with tiny populations, there's a huge challenge between students moving up from year 6 into year 7, where it's huge class sizes in secondary schools. So if we were to go ahead with a proposal such as this, there's no reason why that SEND unit in the primary school actually couldn't hold students in year 7 and 8 and do a much more gradual transition into that secondary school setting. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, that's something that I've been pushing on passionately. I've written a report about it, which I've published in my own constituency. I'm having loads of conversations with my schools, but I will continue to have a conversation with government. But I welcome everyone's contributions today, and thank you very much.